Tim and Phil, thank you very much for joining us today. Tim, before we do the deep dive on the details of the merger of IsoEnergy and Consolidated Uranium, I'm always curious on how these merger discussions begin. How did this deal evolve?
Yeah, thanks, Jimmy, and thanks for having us on today. It's a pleasure to be here. Look, we've IsoEnergy's grown a lot over the last number of years, and we've been very interested to expand beyond the Athabasca Basin and Hurricane. We've looked at several things in the past on a high level, nothing that's come together, but frankly, it's a very small industry. And so we knew Phil and his team, and it really began through some innocuous conversations several months ago where we just started to talk to each other and realized that we've got a lot of complementary assets that really seem to fit together. It wasn't one of those things. I think the market's telling us it's not something that everybody expected. But when we look at it, there really wasn't a lot of overlap. And so we started having discussions. We dug into a little bit deeper and realized on the properties, on some of the projects, and even on the people, we really had a lot of things that complemented each other. And so we decided to start talking in earnest and more seriously about getting together.
And Phil, from your perspective, what was the overall rationale for doing this merger?
Yeah, look, and thank you, Jimmy, for having us. For Consolidated, it's really just a natural extension of our strategy. And for those of you who've been following the company over the last 3 years, we set on a path to consolidate projects around the world, particularly in the best jurisdictions in Canada, in the US, and in Australia. And one of the holes in our portfolio was the Athabasca Basin, the most coveted jurisdiction in the world with the best, highest grade projects. And when, as Tim mentioned, we started some conversations, and for us, it was an instant yes. We watched what they've done at Hurricane. It's a fantastic, exceptional tier 1 asset, and we just wanted to be part of it. And all of the other things that Tim talked about are true as well. With the team, the overlap or the complementary nature of the team, and all the relationships that we have between the various parties. It was an obvious transaction for us, and super excited to get started as a combined company.
I want to ask each of you, what are the benefits of this transaction to your respective shareholders? Tim, let's start with you. What are the primary benefits to the ISO shareholders?
Yeah, look, for us, it's really expanding beyond just the Athabasca Basin. We're adding a lot of resources and some near-term production in some great jurisdictions. So when we look at how we wanted to expand, we wanted to look for these opportunities, but we want them to be in the right place. And so the assets that Phil and the team have put together in the US and Australia in particular really kind of fit with where we wanted to head. We want to be a diversified company. We want opportunities for near-term production, further exploration, and we want that to be in these top jurisdictions around the world. The US, Canada, and Australia specifically in the uranium space. We also recognize what Consolidated has done in a very short period of time, bringing together all these projects to build a company. They bring an acumen around the M&A process, and so we thought there's also a nice fit there to continue looking at how do we grow out in the future. So just a lot of great benefits, including the obvious one, which is increased scale, which really will help us move further and grow in an even quicker manner.
And Phil, how is this transaction benefiting CUR shareholders?
Yeah, and a lot of it would be similar to what Tim just said. But first off, again, it's getting into the Athabasca Basin with a marquee tier 1 asset. Also, the exploration portfolio that they have that ISO has in Athabasca is first rate. For us, also, as Tim pointed out, being part of a bigger company, we think is important. What we've seen in the market is that the flow of funds starting at the bigger names, being one of those top 10, top 15 uranium companies in the world, I think puts us on a great platform, both for attracting investors, but also attracting utilities to work with us on some of our projects. And again, will increase the trading liquidity and position us for future M&A. Again, just to echo what Tim said, our strategy will become part of the business going forward, which is let's go continue to build this business. We think uranium is going to be higher for longer, and we see a lot of opportunities to add other assets to this portfolio along the way.
So that's a good overview of the transaction and the rationale behind it. I want to examine the most advanced assets of each company to give viewers a better sense of what this combined company will look like. Tim, you and your team acquired the Hurricane deposit in 2018, and it underwent extensive drilling, I believe 6 separate drilling campaigns, and now it has a mineral resource of 48.6 million pounds at 34.5% average grade. What work have you done on this asset in this past summer and on your other properties?
Yeah, thanks, Jimmy. Well, I'll just clarify too. We didn't acquire Hurricane as an asset. We acquired the Rockies project property, which at that time didn't have anything. So it's just to give kudos to the ISO team. They went into a property that had been given, basically sold and deemed to be, not an attractive one to other parties, and they found the Hurricane deposit. So that was back in 2018, as you mentioned. Several drill programs came up with that resource. So yeah, we have that resource. We think it's quite a fulsome resource. There's probably not a lot of expansion there, although just mentioning the summer program, we have continued to do some work. We're doing some geophysics around it, continue to do a little bit of drilling, and I think we'll continue to do that going forward to see if we can be expanded around the periphery and even other pods nearby. But right now we are continuing to move the project forward. We've done some internal concept level studies. Really, the next step for us is to figure out how would you mine this project in the most cost-effective way. Like you said, it's almost 50 million pounds, 34.5%. It is along the border with another project called Don Lake that's owned by Cameco and Uranium. We do believe there's something on the other side, that the most high-grade part of the deposit's right on the border. So there will be a story to be told down the road, but right now we're taking this forward as a standalone project that we can determine its outcome on. We're looking at a couple of different mining methods from surface that we really think have some potential. We're looking at ISR, we're looking at jet boring from surface. We're looking at a number of things to really narrow down the approach we want to take and eventually get it to the point where we want to conduct a preliminary economic assessment. So we hope to be moving forward in that respect over the months to come.
And what about your other properties? Are there any of them that you want to highlight or touch on?
Yeah, look, we're just finishing up a great summer campaign. We'll have an announcement on results from the summer drilling and geophysics. We've done a lot of work getting these other projects up to speed. Once we determined the resource last year for Hurricane, we have 20 plus other projects in the basin that haven't done a lot of work on over the last few years. So lots of geophysics, lots of really innovative stuff to determine where our most coveted targets are going forward. We did do some drilling on our Hawk project this summer, which we really like, and we'll continue to advance that project in the winter months to come. And we did some initial drilling on our Ranger project this summer as well. So all of that, as well as a lot of other projects in the pipeline that we're starting to really prioritize and figure out how do we want to take forward this very sizable, high quality project base.
And Phil, one of the compelling features of Consolidated Uranium is that it has near-term production assets in the state of Utah, and this complements ISO's Hurricane asset. But maybe you can just touch on these assets and when we can expect for them to go into production.
Sure, absolutely. So these projects you're referring to, we purchased from Energy Fuels a couple of years ago. These are actually past producing mines. They were mined in the uranium bull market of 06, 07, 08. They're sitting on care and maintenance today. But what it means is there's a tremendous amount of CapEx that was spent on them in the past. We figure about $100 million was spent building these and mining them in the first place. That's all money that we don't have to spend today. So it's very low CapEx to move them back into production. They're fully permitted with all our state and federal operating licenses. And they all are within trucking distance of Energy Fuels' White Mesa Mill, where we have a toll milling agreement. So all that's to say is that we can move them back into production very, very quickly. And what that means, to answer your question directly, is probably within the next 6 to 12 months, we could be mining these projects. It's going to be a function of uranium prices and when Energy Fuels turns that mill back on. But our goal as a company and the work that we're doing on those projects today and what we're going to do for the next period of time is to get them production ready, again, so we can turn them back on very, very quickly when the price moves to a level that justifies bringing them on.
And Phil, Consolidated Uranium has a number of other assets, but in the interest of time, I want to focus on Coles Hill, which has huge optionality. It's in the state of Virginia. Can you just give us an overview of this asset and how it will benefit the combined company going forward?
Yeah, sure. We're really excited about Coles Hill. Point out it has huge optionality. That's on the basis that it has a very large resource, over 160 million pounds of uranium in all categories, ranks as the largest uranium project in the United States by an order of magnitude. The opportunity here, it's a great project, technically very solid. The opportunity with this project is that in Virginia today, there's a moratorium on uranium mining that dates back to the early 80s. And what we're doing is working very hard with local and state politicians to work on overturning that moratorium. We think there's a lot of good reasons for that moratorium to be overturned. It's in the United States where domestic production is very low. They're the largest consumer of uranium. They're very reliant on foreign sources of supply, and that has to change. And so this project could be a very important part of bringing domestic production back to the U.S., supplying fuel for their reactor fleet for years, if not decades to come. And so if we can unlock that, if we can get the moratorium overturned, significant value will be created for the company. It's an asset that has over $100 million spent on it by previous operators. And so we're pretty excited about the potential there. We're working very hard in the background to move that project ahead.
And just another point we should make is the fact that the state of Virginia does have nuclear reactors.
Absolutely. And more than that, the governor of Virginia has gone all in on nuclear power. His energy policy is very clear that nuclear power is the future for the state, whether it's large or small modular reactors. And so that really aligns with our proposition, which is we can be a reliable, domestic, safe source of production for many, many years to come.
That's a good overview of your assets. Let's move on now, and I want to discuss your balance sheet. Tim, ISO Energy recently completed a $35 million raise, which was upsized significantly. And I'm just curious, where was the interest coming from? Was it coming from Canada, the US, Europe?
Yeah, thanks, Jimmy. I think actually the most important thing to note about the financing is the support we got from what we've been calling the cornerstone investors. So our major shareholder, NextGen, contributed to that capital raise, as did major shareholders of Phil's company, so Energy Fuels, Mega Uranium. So those are cornerstone investors these are some of the companies that know the industry better than almost anyone else, and they are supporting Consolidated and ISO going forward. So I take that as a very big vote of confidence. In the upsizing, we also had Sachem Cove come in for a significant share of that, and they, as most people know in the industry, are very well respected and very influential investor in the sector that's really taken a lot of time over the last number of years to get to know and understand this industry. So really a great group of investors that have taken up a good part of that raise.
And Tim, what will be the use of proceeds?
Yeah, so we'll continue to do exactly as Phil and I have talked about. This is a very complementary combination of the company. So we'll continue to do a lot of exploration in northern Saskatchewan and advance the Hurricane project, but as well, Phil and his team, the projects that they've been advancing, Tony M in particular, with its potential for near-term production. It'll be important to continue advancing that. And as we've also spoken about Coles Hill, putting the resources needed to advance that project and others within the portfolio of Consolidated.
And Phil, the one thing that's become very apparent in the last couple of years is the importance of jurisdiction. All of your assets are located in Tier 1 jurisdictions. Maybe you can just speak to that.
Yeah, no, that's an important consideration and really an important part of the strategy going forward. And again, why we're coming together here today is because we think very similarly on this regard. The better jurisdictions are going to become increasingly important for investors and utilities alike. We think that the three places you really want to be are Canada, the US, and Australia. And those are going to be the places that we focus on. Our ultimate goal is to be a multi-asset producer in each of those jurisdictions. And it really is because the uranium sector, single asset, single jurisdiction companies are inherently risky, particularly if you're in some of the sort of fringe jurisdictions where there's lots of uranium in some of these jurisdictions and there's a history of production, and that's great. But geopolitical risk is starting to overshadow that. And so we just want to high grade our portfolio. And I point out that the only other company that's focused on those 3 jurisdictions is Cameco. So we think we're in very good company.
And just to follow up on that, Phil, between both companies, there's a lot of different projects, a lot of different assets. And I'm sure there's a lot of assets there that are not being recognized or properly valued. How do you and Tim plan on bringing out this value in the coming months?
Yeah, look, I think we're going to take a page out of the Consolidated uranium book. So already in our short history, we've created 2 spin-out companies. We created Labrador Uranium, which is now Latitude Uranium and has tremendous exploration projects in Labrador and in Nunavut. We've recently announced the spin-out of a new U.S.-focused exploration company, Premier American Uranium. That's going to be trading before this transaction closes. And so projects that ultimately don't fit the strategy, which is, are you going to be a near-term producer in one of those key jurisdictions, will ultimately be non-core. But as we've done in the past, we'll look to do transactions, whether it's divestitures, spin-outs, or JVs, et cetera, where we're really doing a 1 + 1 = more than 2. And I think we've been successful at that. And I think investors should appreciate that we'll monetize or realize value from some of the non-core assets in a similar fashion.
Phil, we began this discussion with the rationale for merging these 2 companies. There's many uranium companies out there for investors to choose from. Maybe you can just summarize for us why investors should look at the combined company, or what we call the new IsoEnergy.
Yeah, look, I think it's very simple. We've got a great suite of projects, tremendous resource profile, high grades, large projects. We're focused. We have a very clear strategy, this production strategy, which provides investors with tremendous leverage to the price of uranium, whether it's near term, mid-term, or over the long term. We have this unbelievable exploration portfolio, which we're going to continue to work on. Great team. Again, we talked about the complementary nature of it. We're bringing together both of these teams. Virtually everyone is staying on because, we need more people to manage and move this portfolio ahead. And this capital markets profile, I don't think it can be understated. Being bigger is better in this market. We're going to get more capital, lower cost of capital, more access to capital. Institutional investors, ETFs, utilities alike will look at this company more favorably. And that's, I think that really sums it up.
And Tim, maybe I'll just throw the last question at you. What can we expect in terms of news flow, and when is the deal going to close?
Yeah, as far as the deal itself, we're aiming for an early December close. We got the financing, which will be closed within the next couple of weeks. Consolidated needs to do a shareholder vote. I believe that's scheduled into November, and yeah, all going well, will be done in December. So obviously we'll have that news going on. From the IsoEnergy side specifically, we are finishing up and have just put the cap on the summer exploration program. So you will see a release on those results in the very near future as well. So lots of exciting stuff to come, and hopefully what Phil and I have done is really share that we are excited about this. Like it's really exciting to put this together. Our teams are meeting, they're getting along, we're throwing out lots of new ideas, and we're just excited to move this forward.
Well, congratulations. And I want to thank both of you for spending time with us today and providing an overview of your recent transaction. And we look forward to another update when the deal closes.
Yeah, thanks. Appreciate it.